Peace everyone, Unmasked here, and today I'll be showing you how to create this goofy tomato. On the left side of the screen you'll see the color palette I'm using. The numbers correspond to Luminance colored pencils, and the paper I'm coloring on is Stonehenge vellum paper. And for those that support my channel over on Patreon, the real-time drawing of this piece is available to you now. Okay, so to begin this piece, I am just doing a rough sketch with my Graph Gear 2000 mechanical pencil. One of my favorite pencils to sketch with. I fill it with 2B lead because it's easier to erase. One of the things about this piece is that I wanted to give an example of what it's like to be able to take a realism kind of perspective on a piece and take the rules from that and kind of break them and create something unique. And taking a reference photo, the reference photo for this, by the way, was just a regular tomato, but because I established my color palette in the beginning, I'm able to take that realism and then kind of break the rules of it and create this goofy face that actually looks almost like a Pixar character because of the amount of realism that's still left in the piece. So after I finish my little sketch, I go ahead and I start outlining some of my lines with the 070 pencil. And this is just to kind of get rid of the pencil stuff, to be honest with you. And then I go over it a little bit with my eraser just to pick up any leftover pencil marks. The next thing I do is I just do a light layer of the red throughout the entire tomato. I'm using kind of a light touch, nothing real heavy. Similar to last week's tutorial where I drew the orange, on this one I'm doing it quick and easy. It's more of the painterly effect that I mentioned last week, and so it's going to be a bit sloppy in the beginning, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out the details of it by doing layers after I do these initial base layers with just the general colors. Here I'm adding a little bit of the 069 where the tomato has some shadows, and I do some of the details around the mouth, but that's pretty much it. And then I take the 876 pencil and I add a little bit of those orange red colors, and this is kind of where the highlights are of the orange. And it's just, it gives it a little bit brightness opposed to the 070, so it's a good color to use. And then I switch back to the 070 and kind of darken everything a little bit more. I'm slowly building up my layers, and then I go through and I blend it out with my paint thinner. And for my paint thinner brush, I'm using a number 8 round synthetic brush. The brush really is probably the least important thing. I've probably used this brush for like 2 years straight now, and I really have no desire to change it. It works for all the things that I need it to work for. I like the round shape because I can use the tip of it for the smaller parts, and then I can use the side of it for the bigger parts. Now, after my paint thinner dries, I'm going through with my 872 pencil, and this is where I'm kind of establishing those highlights, and this is just the perfect color for highlights on a tomato. It's just desaturated enough, but it's also saturated enough that the highlights look realistic. You don't want to use white with your highlights because sometimes it can look a bit too harsh as a highlight. So this 872 pencil was just absolutely perfect for the highlights. And then I go through with my 069 and darken up some of the shadows, and I also layer on some of the 876 to just blend everything together nicely. And then once I do that, I go back over it with the 070. Once I get those new layers down, I once again take my paint thinner and just kind of blend everything out smoothly. Once you get these layers down, you shouldn't see much of the white parts of the paper. Everything should be quite smooth and more consistent. And this is what's going to give you more of that texture, that smooth look of the tomato. And that's what really makes this, the realism of the tomato stand out. Now I'm taking my 039 and my 548 to just do a little bit of the shading on the stem part of the tomato. And then I use the 732 just to hit up the highlights a little bit. And then I take my paint thinner and I blend that out. I don't really do much to the stem as far as trying to make it look real or anything. I pretty much just focus on the red part of the tomato. Again, I'm taking my 070 pencil and I'm just kind of going over the spots and trying to get rid of the rest of the little bits where the paper texture is showing through. Now I'm taking my 069 pencil and darkening the part of the mouth and doing a little bit of the undershadow of like the eyelids and the cheeks, and just working in some of the details of the mouth. The important part of working in the details of the mouth and the eyes is to try to make the colors blend in well to the rest of the tomato, so it really looks like the face is on the tomato as opposed to just drawing eyes and a mouth on the tomato. I try to make the mouth and eyes look like they're actually part of the tomato. And what really helps with doing this is having the established color palette to be able to contour the tomato in those areas in a way that makes it look like it's actually part of the tomato. And having a color palette is really the way to do that. I feel like each week I do these tutorials, I'm always bringing up the color palette and using it and the benefits of it. And I hope that if this isn't your first time watching one of my tutorials, you're starting to understand how much I stress the importance of having a really good color palette. And I have a tutorial on how I make these color palettes that you can find in my tutorial section on my channel. Also, if you decide to support me on Patreon, the thing that I also offer is that I give you the high resolution reference photo alongside the digital color palette. So if you're interested in that, you can go over to my Patreon page. The other thing that I've done here is I've taken my 801 pencil, which is one of my favorite colored pencils. It's kind of like an ivory white, and I really brought out the highlights of the tomato, and you can see it really made the tomato look three-dimensional. And the other thing that I did is I colored the eyes with the 002, the entire part of the eye, and then also the teeth. I don't want to have any white in that part of the eye or in those parts of the teeth, because it would make it look kind of fake and it'd stand out too much. So I'm taking the 002 and the 801 to kind of soften the white parts a little bit. And then I'm using my 876 to shade the eye along with the 862. Those are the colors that I'm using to kind of shade the eyes and the teeth to settle them back into the face a little bit to make it look like it's part of the tomato. And then I'm also using the 862, the 002, and the 801 to create this nice shadow underneath the tomato. I'm also adding some of the 069 in there to kind of create the effect that the tomato is reflecting on the paper or on the ground where it is. And then I'm taking my colorless blender and I'm using that to smooth out the parts of the eye. And the last little bit that I do is I shave off a little bit of the 801 and I create those little white specks in the eyes. And then I use the back of my pencil to push those into the paper. And then I just brush it off. All right, everyone, here's the finished product. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. Remember that if you'd like to see the real-time video, to head over to my Patreon page. Otherwise, be sure to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.